Hi all, welcome to Tech Forum. In this video, let us talk about what is Dispatcher in Adobe Experience Manager. Most of the AEM beginners will have this question. What is Dispatcher? Dispatcher is a web server module from Adobe to enable caching and load balancing for the AEM websites. The main purpose of the dispatcher is caching as much of the site content to speed up the site load. The dispatcher module uses the web server's ability to serve the static content. So the web servers are mainly meant for serving the static content. Dispatcher places the cached documents in the document root of the web server. So web server enables the static content from the doc root to be accessed externally through website URLs. Another important functionality is Dispatcher helps us to protect your AEM servers from attacks by enabling the required security filter rules. Filter out the bad requests mainly. This acts as a front gate for all the requests to the AEM servers. This helps us to mitigate different security attacks and other attacks like DOS. Also, this helps us to block the unwanted request reaching backend AEM server. This acts as a reverse proxy to the AEM servers. So we already talked about this is going to cache all the static data, but the first time the request should be sent to AEM, also any other dynamic data. So the request should be sent to AEM. So to achieve that, this will act as a reverse proxy to access the dynamic content from the publishers whenever required. Also again another one is this enables the load balancing to the backend AEM servers. You can have multiple AEM servers. Even dispatchers can load balance to multiple AEM backend servers. Also this enables high performance and high availability static website. So it's again the dispatcher is a module on the web server. Obviously it will use the web server's capability. Example, if you take Apache is tuned for handling millions of requests, and for high availability. So again the AEM dispatcher inherit that. The dispatcher always works with the web server and acts as a reverse proxy to the AEM servers. This combines the speed of static web server with the flexibility of the content management server AEM. Dispatcher module supported in different web servers like Apache and IIS. The dispatcher module can be downloaded from this specific URL. Let me go to that. Yeah, if you go here, you can find out the release notes. Then if you go here, you can find the URL for those things. Yeah. So Linux, it's operating system specific, Windows, then yeah. In AEM as a cloud, the dispatcher module is part of the SDK bundle and you can run through the Docker container. The cloud SDKs can be downloaded from this specific URL. Let me show you. Yeah, this one, experience.adobe.com. Here you can see the, if you go to the AEM as a cloud service, you can see the SDK bundle like AEM SDK. So you can download this specific bundle. So refer the video link in the description for more detail on setting up AEM as a cloud local dispatcher setup. You should have the required access to download the SDK bundle. Let us now see the different infrastructure pattern with the dispatcher. Let me go here. Yeah, if you see here, this is the common infrastructure pattern used to by most of the AEM implementations. If you see here, like author, they create the content. So we have an instance called AEM author. So all this content creation will happen in author. Then we have publishers. They are going to store the live content. So once the content is ready in author, AEM author, it will get activated or published to publishers. Now from the end user perspective, they will access the content. Most of the cases we will have a CDN like Akamai or CloudFront or Cloudflare. CDN is a caching layer again. So it will cache all the content based on the configuration. Then here we do a load balancer. Then we have the dispatcher here. This is again a web server, Apache. So then like the mod dispatcher module is there. So dispatcher is going to connect with the backend publisher, AEM publisher. So here we are having a one-to-one mapping. One dispatcher is connected to one publisher. It's a one-to-one. Like yeah, you can see this, two publishers, two dispatcher. So they will give better performance. So because like all the static content is going to be cached here Also, like these ALB will route to either one of this dispatcher. Now let's see is like some variant to that. Even you can have a variation. We already talked about like dispatcher also can do a load balancing. Additionally, ELB. So if I go to this is one of the variation. If you see here, I have two dispatcher, but both the dispatchers are pointing or directing the traffic to the same publisher. Now here, like let's say you have more static cached content, but the dynamic content is very less. Then you can have multiple. This you can even it can vary. Like you can have multiple dispatchers, like connecting to single publisher or like whatever the combination. Now another one variation is again one dispatcher even load balance or like route the traffic to different AEM publishers. Yeah, now here if you see like again like you can have like n number of dispatcher each dispatcher connect to every all the publishers. If you see here like I have two dispatcher, this dispatcher if you take it connecting to both the publishers. So same case here like it will give more redundancy. Even one of the publisher is not available, both the dispatcher going to serve the content. The infrastructure pattern is going to be based on your requirement, your website traffic and your performance requirement and your availability requirement. As we discussed already, the primary function of the dispatcher is caching as much as content. Dispatcher caches all the documents expect like this criteria. The URL with the query parameters means the URL is dynamic. The behavior can be changed to cache the URL even with specific query parameters. We can whitelist the query parameters so that the URLs with that specific query parameters will be cached. Then the file extension is not available. The web server always needs the extension to determine the document type. So if a file, the extension is missing, those file will not be get cached. Then if the authentication header is set, if you enable authentication for a website, those content will not get cached. But again, the behavior can be changed to cache the URL with authentication header. Then the next one is the request is not of type get or head. Like example, if it is post, the URL will not get cached. Now, if any URL returns the HTTP code other than 200. Now, even you can exclude some URLs from caching through some dispatcher configurations. If we exclude or enable some rule for that, those URLs will not get cached. Again, if you want any case you want to notify the dispatcher to not to cache some of the URLs, even you can set this header like from your publisher response.set header dispatcher no cache. So if this header is available, dispatcher will not cache those URLs. Let us now see how the dispatcher returns the document to the browser. This is a simple workflow. So it explained how dispatcher handles the document, cache and render the document from the publisher. So there is a document request. Then first dispatcher checks is the request cacheable. If it is not cacheable, it will try to render the document from the publisher. If it is cacheable, then it will check whether it is already in the cache. If it is not there, then again it will render from the publisher. If it is there in the cache, it will first check if it is up to date. In that case, the file will be returned. If the cache is not up to date, it will again request the document from the publisher. So then while rendering the document from the publisher, it will check whether the document is cacheable. If it is cacheable, it will cache that, put that document into the cache so that the future request will get it from this cache. If the document is not cacheable, the document will be directly sent to the browser. Let us now talk about the cache invalidation process. The cache invalidation process is important to keep the dispatcher content up to date. So there are multiple options to do the cache invalidation. Cache invalidation means you can invalidate the existing cache so that dispatcher will update the content from the backend AEM server. So the first one is you can define a replication agent on the AEM author instance that sends a cache invalidation request to dispatcher based on specific events, example activating or deactivating a page. Based on the invalidation request, dispatcher remove these pages that have changed as well as the files that are directly associated with the modified files, means the child content. The content will be cached again from the publishers on the subsequent request. Next one is auto invalidation. Automatically invalidates parts of the cache that may be out of date after an update from author. There is a special empty file with the name .stat in each folder from the doc root down to the level based on the .stat file level. The .stat file is touched on every cache invalidation request from the author. On subsequent request, dispatcher compares the .stat file last modified time with the last modified time of the actual file. If the file is older, then renders the file from the publisher and the cache for the future request. The default stat file level is 0, means the site from the root level is invalidated, the complete site, on every cache invalidation request from the author. Configure the stat file level based on your site structure. Even you can control the files that should be invalidated through the some configurations. Like example, you say you don't want to invalidate the .js file or .css. So only you want to invalidate .html. So you can configure, or even you can configure the specific file level. This is the cache invalidation flow. If you see like the author user activating a page, then this author instance replicating that content to the publisher. The same time sending a invalidation request to the dispatcher. If you see here in the dispatcher, as we discussed, there is a .stat file in the content folders. So this is based on the stat file level, whether if it is a 0, only root folder will have that file. Otherwise, based on that setting, that level down to that specific level, the .stat file will be created. Now, if you see in this case, it's touching the .stat file, the immediate .stat file and the parent stat files will get touched. So then it is deleting this content /foo.star. Also, we already discussed the child content will get deleted. Now, the next time when somebody requests this content /foo.html, so there is no file, obviously. So this file will get rendered from the publisher and cached on the dispatcher. Also, if there is any, like if, let's say in the .stat file is touched, if you have any other HTML files or something here, also we enable the auto invalidation for those specific file types or files because this .stat file is now updated. For the subsequent request, dispatcher will remove this file, the current file, because during the invalidation those files are not removed. Only the actual file and the child files are removed. The other related files are not removed. But on the subsequent request, based on the comparison of this .stat file and the actual file last modified timestamp, the dispatcher requests the new file from the publisher and update the cache. Yeah, we have some other options for the cache invalidation. One is resource only cache invalidation. It means it will remove only the specific resource, whatever the resource need to be invalidated. In earlier approaches, we have seen like it will remove the actual resource, then child resources. Also, the auto invalidation will remove the related resource also if it is configured for that. But resource only cache invalidation, through this you can only remove the specific resources. The resource only cache invalidation won't touch the .stat file, so that other related files will not get invalidated in this case. Also, other one is a refetching cache invalidation. So we have seen here like right now like on the approach whatever we discussed. So on the subsequent request, the invalidated files will get rendered from the publisher. In that case, the challenge is like if the dispatcher receives multiple parallel requests for the invalidated file. So dispatcher sends all this requests to the publisher. Why? Because dispatcher won't have that file in the cache. It's already invalidated. So all the the parallel request will reach to the publishers. So publisher will get loaded with additional or multiple requests. So due to this invalidation. So this refetching cache invalidation is like it will prefetch the content immediately from the publisher and cache it on the invalidation, so that the publishers will not get multiple requests from the dispatcher. Another option is TTL based cache invalidation. You can enable TTL based invalidation by adding a specific configuration called enable TTL. So this setting makes the dispatcher respect the cache control response headers from the backend server and invalidate the files based on the interval configured in the header, cache control header. So like some cases you want to honor the cache control, you don't want to invalidate the files based on the activation or based on the action, but based on the TTL value configured in the cache control header. Even you should be able to invalidate the cache through an HTTP request. You can send the required parameters, the data, and accessing a specific URL. You should be able to invalidate the cache, the specific cache in the dispatcher. So the last one is through manual deletion, because as we discussed, is a dispatcher is using the web server capability. So you can go to the web server and manually delete the content or the cached content from the doc root. Let us now quickly see the dispatcher configuration files. So let me go into this. I'm just showing a demo file, but in the real scenario, it is more modularized. But here I'm just showing everything in the same file. If you see dispatcher.any, then forms, then multiple forms are configured. But in real scenario, it is going to be more modularized. You will have the configuration in a different files. Then you should be including into the specific files. Now the first one, maybe quickly I will show you this. Go to the httpd conf. So if I go here, like you can see the configuration of this module. Obviously I included that specific module, load module. You should be doing the dispatcher module. So once that, then you should be enabling this module, this Apache 2.c. Here's some specific configuration, like you can say dispatcher config, what is the parent file of the dispatcher configuration. Then what is the log level, dispatcher log file and the log level, you can keep it. Then dispatcher decline route, the dispatcher should be handling the route request. Now dispatcher use processed processed URL. This will be used mainly if you have some PT rules in the Apache, so then you can make it on, so that it will use the processed URL. Means Apache have multiple modules, other modules like dispatcher. You can process the URL with even with other module. Here you are notifying the dispatcher saying use the processed URL instead of using the actual URL came from the browser. Now then another one is you can say dispatcher pass error equal to 0. Here we are saying who is going to handle the error. 0 means dispatcher will directly send that error response. But if it is 10 to 1, it will hand over the error handling to the web server. Now dispatcher keep alive timeout, you can increase this will be used to while connecting to the backend server. Now another configuration is you can see here for the root folder, we are setting this again module data set handler, dispatcher handler. Even you can enable this configuration through individual virtual host, but this is the global, it will get applied to all the virtual host. Now the next one is let's say virtual host, individual virtual host. We are saying document root, then what is the server name. This is the Apache capability. Even you can configure this whatever we discussed here, right? Set handler, other header handling, and whatever you want you can handle it here. Then another one is dispatcher file, mainly this form file. So if you see here a lot of sections, one is the client header section. So here you can say what kind of headers from the browser should be forwarded to the publisher. Star means all the headers will be sent, but you can whitelist whatever you want. Then virtual host means what URL or domain this form file is going to handle it. You can have multiple form file. Then renders, this is the AEM server detail, the backend detail. Here if you see host name, then port number, then timeout, you can configure multiple renders. This is the render 01, render 02, 03, how many renders you want you can configure. Then dispatcher will utilize use those configuration for load balancing. Now another one main thing we talked about the filter section, the another main functionality is whitelisting the request. So if you see here the default behavior is denying everything, right? This syntax ignore it because globe this all not supported, maybe this is the old configuration, but otherwise we are denying everything star, every request will be denied by default. So now we need to whitelist whatever we want. Type allow, I am allowing this extension, or like other this URL, personalization URL. If you want again specifically deny something you already allowed, like wildcard, you can do that, deny also. Otherwise, like most of the case, everything denied, whitelist what is required. Now another section is cache. Here we are saying the dark root, what is the dark root for this. Most of the cases, like dark root is going to be same for all the form file and all the website, because like AEM always caches like the full content path, content slash something, so that it is unique for every website, so that the single dark root should be okay. Now the stat file level we already talked about. By default it is 0, so only one root level that stat file will be created, but you can change based on your like site structure, like what level those, because based on the level the invalidation will work. If like only those the current level and the parent level will get invalidated, the child level, the child folder level, it will not get invalidated, because the stat file will not be touched. So only that specific level will get touched. Now allow authorize, we talked about like caching. The by default the authenticated request will not be get cached. If you want, you can enable this through this level. Now then another one important is like in the cache the rules. Here we are saying like everything should be cached. So we are saying globe star type allow. So now you can go and tell like don't cache this, right? You can deny something, right? Don't cache this specific pattern, or don't cache this specific URL. So for that you can utilize this. Now another one is invalidate. Again we earlier talked about. So what section of the website should be invalidated based on that stat file like timestamp. So we are saying like deny everything. So don't invalidate anything. Auto invalidate anything. So then you can specifically say like .html should be invalidated based on the .stat file timestamp. Now again, like you should be only specific JS, or like in case you are saying like if some site content is getting updated, your some file or like sitemap example, or like robots.txt, some of the examples, right? You want to get invalidated automatically. So in that case, you can allow those URLs also. Now allowed clients, like only this allowed clients will be able to do a invalidation request. So like otherwise like anybody can request it, so that's going to create a performance impact. So but this will restrict. I'm saying deny everybody, so only this specific IP can request a invalidation. Same thing. Then we talked about the ignore URL params. Like we talked about like when the URL has a query parameter, it will not get cached. But here you can change the behavior. First, by default, everything is denying. Then we are saying if the query parameter is with the name type, so you allow the caching. Another one is headers. It means like what response headers should be get cached. So that on the subsequent cached request, this headers also will be sent. So you can specify, like here we are saying cache control expires last modified, like given some custom header you want to cache, you can cache it. Then another one important we talked about is the TTL. So you can say like enable TTL, so that based on the cache control headers like max age, expires, or whatever the headers, the content will get invalidated. Yeah, so those are all the important configurations like in the form file. You can configure the different parameters based on your website requirement. As a summary, the dispatcher module acts as a gateway to the AEM websites, only allows the whitelisted request to the AEM publishers, and also caches all the possible requests for better performance. Reverse proxy the request to AEM servers whenever required. As the dispatcher module is enabled in the web server, you should be able to leverage the web server functionalities like enabling the redirects, setting up the HTTP response headers, etc. And also other web server related modules, example mod SSL for setting up the SSL, mod headers, mod proxy, etc. can also be used based on your requirement. That's all for today. Thanks all for watching the video. See you in the next video.